This is 98.3 FM, Outbreak FM. David Morgan here. It's 9:17 p.m. on a Friday night that started like any other. People heading home from work, planning their weekends, living their normal lives. But in the last 43 minutes, something has started happening in our city's hospitals. Something that began with a routine blood transfusion and has now escalated into what medical professionals are calling an unprecedented biological crisis. Sarah just handed me the initial reports, and I need you to listen carefully because what I'm about to tell you affects anyone who has received a blood transfusion in the past 72 hours. Anyone scheduled for surgery, anyone with a medical condition requiring blood products. This is critical information that could save your life. At 8:34 p.m. St. Catherine's Hospital emergency room administered a routine blood transfusion to a 28-year-old accident victim. Type A positive blood, standard protocol, nothing unusual about the procedure. The patient's vitals were stable. The transfusion was proceeding normally, and then 17 minutes after the blood entered his system, something went catastrophically wrong. The patient began experiencing what doctors initially thought was a transfusion reaction: elevated heart rate, fever spike, tremors. Standard emergency protocols were initiated, but the symptoms didn't match any known transfusion complication. The patient's temperature spiked to 104 degrees Fahrenheit in less than 3 minutes. His pupils dilated and became unresponsive to light, and his blood, the blood visible in his fourth lines, started changing color. Dr. Lisa Brennan was the attending physician. She's been working emergency medicine for 12 years, has seen every kind of transfusion complication documented in medical literature. What she witnessed tonight, she says, isn't in any textbook. The patient's blood went from normal red to this dark, almost black color, thick and viscous, moving through the four tubing, like motor oil instead of blood. The patient coded at 8:53 p.m., full cardiac arrest. Resuscitation efforts were initiated immediately, but here's where it gets disturbing. When they attempted to intubate, when they tried to insert the breathing tube, the patient's mouth and throat were coated with that same dark substance, not blood from internal bleeding, something else, something that had replaced or transformed his blood into this unknown material. Resuscitation failed. Time of death, 8:58 p.m. Cause of death, currently unknown. The body was moved to the hospital morgue for autopsy, but before they could even begin preliminary examination, 2 more patients in 2 different hospitals presented with identical symptoms. Both had received blood transfusions earlier today. Both experienced the same rapid deterioration. Both died within 20 minutes of symptom onset. 3 deaths in 3 different hospitals in less than an hour, all connected by one common factor: blood transfusions using products from the central city blood bank. 9:23 p.m. now. Sarah's on the phone with the blood bank director, Dr. Marcus Webb. He's implementing emergency protocols, pulling all blood products from circulation, initiating a full inventory audit. But here's the problem. The Central City Blood Bank processes approximately 400 units of blood per day. They supply 16 hospitals across the metropolitan area. In the last 72 hours, they've distributed over 1,200 units, 1,200 units of potentially contaminated blood, and we have no idea how many have already been transfused into patients. The health department has issued an emergency medical alert. All hospitals are to immediately cease any scheduled transfusions, quarantine all blood products received from Central City Blood Bank, and monitor any patients who received transfusions in the past 72 hours for unusual symptoms. But that's reactive medicine. That's trying to catch a problem after it's already spreading. How many people are walking around right now with contaminated blood in their systems? How many are experiencing early symptoms and dismissing them as post-surgical discomfort or medication side effects? How many are hours away from the same rapid deterioration that killed 3 people tonight? 9:31 p.m. Dr. Brennan is calling Sarah with an update from St. Catherine's. They've conducted a preliminary examination of the first victim, the accident patient who died at 8:58. What they found is medically impossible, but she's describing it anyway because impossible is what we're dealing with tonight. The patient's cardiovascular system, his entire network of veins and arteries, has been infiltrated by an unknown organism. Not bacteria, not a virus, something cellular but structurally different from any known pathogen. Under microscopic examination, the organism appears to be replacing blood cells, consuming them and replicating in their place, using the cardiovascular system as a growth medium. The contaminated blood isn't being attacked by white blood cells. It's not triggering an immune response because somehow, impossibly, the organism is mimicking human cellular markers well enough to avoid detection by the body's defense systems. It's camouflage at a molecular level. The body doesn't recognize the invasion until it's already too far advanced to fight. Dr. Brennan describes the organism's structure as crystalline, not ice crystals, but organic crystals, geometric patterns forming within the blood cells themselves, reorganizing the cellular architecture into something new, and it's spreading fast. In the tissue samples they extracted, the organism doubled its presence every 8 minutes. That's exponential growth. That's the kind of replication rate that overwhelms biological systems before they can mount effective resistance. If this organism is in the blood supply, if it's being transfused into patients across multiple hospitals, then we're looking at a contamination event that could affect hundreds of people simultaneously. This isn't a localized outbreak. This is systematic distribution of a biological agent through our medical infrastructure. 9:44 p.m. I'm reading through the Central City Blood Bank's donation records, accessed through Sarah's contact at the health department. The contamination has to have a source. Blood doesn't spontaneously develop unknown organisms. Something entered the supply chain. Someone donated contaminated blood, or the blood was exposed to contamination during processing, or storage conditions allowed something to develop that shouldn't exist in properly maintained blood products. The records show 847 individual donations processed in the last 72 hours. Each donation was tested for standard blood-borne pathogens, HIV, hepatitis, syphilis, all the normal screening protocols. Every single donation passed standard testing, which means either the organism is so novel that existing tests don't detect it, or it developed after the screening was completed. Dr. Webb is reviewing storage logs, checking temperature records, examining the refrigeration systems where blood products are maintained. Blood banks operate under strict conditions, temperature-controlled, sterile environments, constant monitoring. Whatever this organism is, it survived and thrived in conditions specifically designed to prevent biological contamination. Sarah just brought up a concerning point. What if the contamination isn't accidental? What if someone deliberately introduced this organism into the blood supply? It would be an effective vector for biological attack. Blood products are trusted implicitly by medical professionals. They're administered to vulnerable patients without suspicion. If you wanted to spread something through a population quickly and efficiently, contaminating blood banks would be devastatingly effective. But who would do this? And why? What could anyone gain from killing random hospital patients through contaminated transfusions? Unless the deaths aren't the goal. Unless there's something else happening that we haven't discovered yet. 9:58 p.m. 2 more deaths reported. One at Memorial Hospital, one at Riverside Medical Center. Both patients received transfusions earlier today. Both experienced the same rapid onset symptoms. Both died before doctors could intervene effectively. The death count is now at 5, and we're less than 90 minutes into this crisis. Dr. Brennan is describing the second victim's autopsy findings to Sarah over the phone. The crystalline organism isn't just replacing blood cells, it's integrating with tissue. The heart muscle shows signs of infiltration. The organism spreading beyond the cardiovascular system into surrounding tissue structures. The lungs, the liver, the kidneys, all showing microscopic evidence of crystal formation within cellular matrices. It's not killing the organs, it's changing them, transforming tissue at a cellular level, reorganizing biological structures into something hybrid, part human, part crystalline organism, and the transformation is permanent. Even if you could remove the contaminated blood, even if you could perform a complete blood transfusion replacement, the organism in the tissues would continue spreading, would eventually transform the entire body. There's no treatment protocol for this, no antidote, no medical intervention that can reverse cellular transformation at this scale. Once the organism enters the bloodstream, once it begins replicating, the patient is committed to whatever this process leads to. Death, transformation, or something we haven't seen yet. 10:14 p.m. Sarah's monitoring social media, and reports are starting to appear from people who received transfusions in the last few days. Most are dismissing their symptoms as normal post-transfusion effects, fatigue, slight fever, general malaise, but a few are describing things that match the hospital victims. Unusual taste in their mouths, metallic and sharp, darkening of veins visible under their skin, sensation of cold spreading through their bodies from the inside out. These people are at home, They're not in hospitals where doctors can monitor their condition. They're alone or with family members who don't understand that. What they're experiencing is the beginning of something catastrophic. And by the time they realize they need medical help, by the time the symptoms escalate to the point where they call 911, it might already be too late. We need to get this information out. We need to tell anyone who's received a blood transfusion in the last 72 hours to seek immediate medical attention. To get to a hospital now, before the symptoms progress beyond the point where intervention might be possible. Even if intervention isn't currently available, at least they'll be in a medical setting where their condition can be monitored, where medical professionals can try experimental treatments, where they're not alone when the worst happens. Sarah's drafting an emergency public service announcement. I'll broadcast it every 15 minutes until further notice. If you're listening, if you or someone you know received a blood transfusion in the last 3 days, go to the nearest hospital immediately. Tell them you may have been exposed to contaminated blood from Central City Blood Bank. Don't wait for symptoms. Don't assume you're fine because you feel normal. This organism can be in your system, replicating, spreading, transforming your tissue, and you won't know until it's already too late. 10:23 p.m. Dr. Webb from the blood bank has identified something critical. He's been reviewing donation records chronologically, looking for the earliest point where contamination could have entered the system. Every batch of blood is processed and stored separately, tagged with collection, date and time, donor identification, blood type, by cross-referencing which batches were used for the transfusions that resulted in deaths. He's narrowed the contamination source to a specific collection period. Wednesday morning, between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. 43 donors during that 3-hour window. One of them is patient 0. One of them brought this organism into the blood supply, either knowingly or unknowingly. Their donation was processed, tested clean by standard screening, stored in the refrigeration system, and then distributed to hospitals where it was transfused into unsuspecting patients. Dr. Webb is pulling up the donor records now. Names, addresses, contact information, medical histories. He's looking for anything unusual. Any indication that one of these donors was carrying an organism that existing tests failed to detect. But the records show nothing out of the ordinary. All donors passed the pre-donation health screening. None reported recent illness, traveled to exotic locations, exposure to unusual substances. They were screened, approved, donated, and went home. Except one of them was infected with something that's now killing people. Sarah's working with the health department to contact all 43 donors. Emergency phone calls, asking them to come in for immediate medical examination. If they're the source, if they're still carrying the organism, they could be experiencing symptoms themselves, or they could be asymptomatic carriers, immune to the effects somehow, spreading the infection without knowing it. The phone calls are starting to go through. Sarah's listening to the responses, and most donors sound confused but cooperative. They'll come in, they'll get tested, they want to help. But 3 of the 43 donors aren't answering their phones. Their numbers ring through to voicemail. No response, no callback. One of those 3 could be patient 0. One of them could be at home right now, dead from the same organism they unknowingly donated. Or worse, one of them could be transforming, experiencing the cellular changes that we've only seen in autopsy victims so far, becoming something that's no longer entirely inhuman. 10:41 p.m. The first of the donors has arrived at the health department testing facility. Jennifer Alvarez, 34 years old, donated Wednesday at 7:15 a.m. She's describing her condition to the medical examiner, and the symptoms are there. Subtle, but present. Slight fever, 99.8 degrees. Unusual fatigue despite adequate sleep. And the metallic taste, that sharp, almost electric flavor at the back of her throat that she's been noticing since yesterday. Blood samples are being drawn. Rushed to the laboratory for immediate analysis. If Jennifer is infected, if the organism is in her bloodstream, they'll see the same crystalline structures under microscopic examination. And if she's infected, that raises a crucial question. How did she get infected in the first place? You don't spontaneously develop an unknown organism in your blood. She was exposed to something, came into contact with a source, absorbed the infection through some pathway we haven't identified yet. If we can trace her movements before the donation, if we can find out where she was and what she did in the days leading up to Wednesday morning, we might find the origin point. The source of the organism before it entered the blood supply. 10:56 p.m. The laboratory results. are back from Jennifer's blood. Sample posit the crystalline organism is present in her bloodstream, visible under high magnification, actively replicating within her blood cells. Estimated organism concentration, 12% of total blood volume. That's early stage, before the rapid escalation that killed the hospital patients. But it's there, and it's growing. Jennifer is being moved to an isolation ward, placed under quarantine protocols. She's not showing severe symptoms yet, which means either the organism progresses more slowly in the original host, or Jennifer has some natural resistance that's keeping the infection manageable. Either way, she's going to be monitored closely, every vital sign tracked, every symptom documented, because she's the first living person we can study who's carrying this organism, and hasn't died from it yet. Dr. Webb is interviewing Jennifer through an isolation intercom, asking about her activities before the blood donation. Where did she go? Who did she see? What did she eat? Any unusual experiences? Any contact with sick people? Any injuries or infections in the week before donation? Jennifer's responses are detailed. She works as a dental hygienist at Riverside Dental Clinic. Regular schedule, Monday through Friday. Same patients she's been seeing for years. No travel recently. No exotic food. No known exposure to contagious individuals. She lives alone, minimal social contact outside of work. By all accounts, her life is routine, unremarkable, with no obvious vector for infection, except for one detail. 3 days before the donation, on Sunday evening, Jennifer went to the emergency room at St. Catherine's Hospital. Minor injury, a deep cut on her hand from a broken glass while washing dishes. The wound was cleaned, stitched, bandaged. Standard emergency room procedure. She was given a tetanus shot as precaution and sent home with wound care instructions. The tetanus shot, administered from a multi-dose vial stored in the emergency room medication refrigerator. The same emergency room where the first victim died tonight. The same hospital that's now reporting 3 more patients showing symptoms after receiving blood transfusions. What if the contamination didn't start at the blood bank? What if it started at the hospital? What if the organism is in more than just the blood supply? 11:09 p.m., Sarah is pulling medical records from St. Catherine's emergency room, specifically looking at medication administration logs from Sunday evening when Jennifer received her tetanus shot. The multi-dose vial was used for 6 patients that night. 6 people received injections from the same contaminated source. If the organism was in that vial, if someone or something introduced it into the medication supply, then Jennifer wasn't the only one infected. There are 5 other people walking around with this organism in their systems, possibly experiencing symptoms, possibly progressing toward the same transformation we've seen in the autopsy victims. The health department is scrambling to contact those 5 individuals. Emergency calls, urgent requests to come in for testing, but the medication logs only show patient identification numbers, not names or contact information. The hospital's records department is being awakened at home, called in to cross-reference ID numbers with patient files, to pull addresses and phone numbers so emergency teams can make contact. This is taking too long. Every minute wasted is another minute the organism spends replicating in those patients' bloodstreams. If we don't find them soon, if we don't get them into quarantine before their conditions deteriorate, we could have 5 more deaths on our hands. 11:24 p.m. One of the 5 patients has been located. Michael Torres, 41, came to the emergency room Sunday night with a sprained ankle. Received tetanus shot, same vial as Jennifer. He is not answering his home phone, but his employer, a 24-hour manufacturing plant, confirms he's currently at work, scheduled for night shift. Police are being dispatched to the plant to locate Michael and transport him to the testing facility. But there's resistance. Michael's supervisor is refusing to release him without proper authorization, citing company policies about employee removal from workplace. The police are explaining the medical emergency, the public health risk, but bureaucracy is slowing everything down. Sarah is listening to the exchange on police radio, and she's getting frustrated. Every second counts when you're dealing with exponential organism replication. Michael could be experiencing symptoms right now, could be in the early stages of transformation, could collapse on the factory floor before anyone understands what's happening to him finally. Authorization comes through. Michael is being escorted from the factory by police officers wearing protective equipment. He's cooperative but confused, doesn't understand why he's being detained, keeps asking what he did wrong. The officers can't explain because they don't fully understand it themselves. All they know is that this man might be infected with something dangerous, and he needs to be quarantined immediately. 11:38 p.m. Michael arrives at the testing facility, and the medical team can see the symptoms even before they draw blood. His skin has a grayish tint, subtle but visible under fluorescent lighting. His eyes are dilated, pupils unresponsive to light changes, and when he speaks, his voice has a slight rasp, like his throat is being constricted by something internal. Blood draw is performed. Samples rushed to analysis. While they wait for results, the medical examiner asks Michael about his condition. Has he been feeling ill? Any unusual symptoms? Fever, fatigue, strange sensations? Michael admits he's been feeling off since Monday. Thought it was just the sprained ankle affecting his overall health, the pain keeping him from sleeping properly. But the symptoms he describes don't match a simple orthopedic injury. He's been experiencing muscle spasms, involuntary tremors in his hands and arms. His sense of taste has changed, everything tasting metallic and sharp, and he's been cold, constantly cold, despite wearing extra layers and turning up the heat in his apartment. These are the same symptoms Jennifer reported, the same early-stage indicators that preceded rapid deterioration in the hospital victims. Michael is infected, almost certainly, and based on the timeline of his symptoms, he's further along in the progression than Jennifer. 11:47 p.m. Laboratory results confirm it. Michael's blood shows 34% organism concentration, more than double Jennifer's level. The crystalline structures are visible throughout his blood sample, actively consuming blood cells, replicating at an accelerated rate. At this progression speed, Michael will reach critical organism concentration within 6 to 8 hours. What happens at critical concentration? We don't know. The hospital victims died before reaching that point, their bodies unable to sustain the rapid transformation. But what if Michael survives? What if his body adapts to the organism's presence, integrates with it instead of rejecting it? Would he transform into something viable, something that can exist as a hybrid of human tissue and crystalline organism? Dr. Brennan doesn't think survival is possible. The organism is too aggressive, too destructive to existing biological systems. But she's never seen anything like this before. None of them have. Medical science has no framework for understanding what this organism does or how it interacts with human physiology. All they can do is observe, document, and hope they learn something that might help future patients. Michael is being moved into isolation next to Jennifer's ward. 2 infected individuals, 2 different progression stages, both serving as living laboratories for an organism we don't understand. Sarah is setting up camera feeds so we can monitor their conditions remotely, track their symptoms and watch what happens as the organism continues its transformation process. I don't want to watch people die. I don't want to document human suffering for broadcast purposes. But this information needs to be recorded. Someone, somewhere, might find a pattern we're missing, might see something in these observations that leads to understanding, treatment, survival. So we watch, we record, we bear witness to whatever comes next. 11:52 p.m. 3 more of the Sunday night injection patients have been located and brought in for testing. All 3 are showing symptoms. All 3 have elevated organism concentrations in their bloodstreams. The infection rate from that single contaminated tetanus vial is 100%. Everyone who received medication from it is infected, which raises the question, how many other medication vials are contaminated? St. Catherine's emergency room uses hundreds of multi-dose vials every week. Vaccines, antibiotics, pain medications, all drawn from bulk supplies stored in medication refrigerators throughout the hospital. If the organism can survive and replicate in these environments, if it can contaminate injectable medications without being detected by standard safety protocols, then the scope of this outbreak could be far larger than we initially thought. The hospital is conducting emergency audits of all medication supplies. Every vial is being pulled for testing, every injectable drug removed from circulation until it can be verified as uncontaminated. But that's St. Catherine's alone. What about the other 15 hospitals supplied by the same pharmaceutical distributors? What about clinics, urgent care facilities, private medical practices? We could be looking at thousands of contaminated medication vials distributed across the entire metropolitan medical infrastructure, and every injection from those vials is another infection vector, another patient exposed to an organism that transforms human tissue at a cellular level. Sarah's coordinating with the pharmaceutical distributors, trying to trace the supply chain backwards, identify where the medications are manufactured, how they're transported, where contamination could have been introduced. But the supply chain is complex, involving multiple facilities, numerous transportation steps, countless handling points, Finding the source could take days of investigation. We don't have days. The patients we know about are progressing rapidly. The patients we don't know about, the ones who received injections from contaminated vials and haven't been identified yet, they're out there experiencing symptoms, unaware that they're infected with something that's transforming their bodies from the inside out. 12:07 a.m. Michael Torres is deteriorating. His organism concentration has jumped to 51% in just 20 minutes. The crystalline structures are visible now without microscopic magnification, appearing as dark lines beneath his skin, tracing the pathways of his veins and arteries, like a roadmap of infection spreading through his cardiovascular system. Dr. Brennan is monitoring his vitals through the isolation ward observation window. Heart rate elevated, 142 beats per minute and climbing. Blood pressure dropping, 98/60 seconds and falling. Core temperature oscillating between extreme fever and hypothermia. His body's thermoregulation system failing to maintain stable conditions. But Michael is conscious but disoriented. He's trying to speak, trying to tell the medical staff something, but his voice is distorted. Words slurring together in ways that suggest neurological impairment. The organism has reached his brain, Sarah realizes. It's not just transforming blood and tissue, it's affecting neural pathways, altering brain chemistry, changing the very structures that define consciousness and cognition. What happens to a person's mind when their neurons are being replaced by crystalline organisms? Do they experience the transformation consciously, feeling their thoughts changing, their memories reorganizing, their sense of self dissolving into something alien? Or does consciousness simply cease, snuffed out when critical neural structures are compromised? 12:19 a.m. Michael's transformation is accelerating beyond anything the medical team anticipated. His skin is taking on a translucent quality, tissue becoming semi-permeable, allowing the crystalline structures beneath to show through clearly. His eyes have changed color, the irises shifting from brown to a pale gray that reflects light in unusual patterns, and he's speaking, not the confused, slurred speech from earlier. Clear, articulate words in a voice that sounds like Michael but somehow different, modulated by changes to his vocal cords and resonance chambers. He's saying that he understands now, that the organism isn't killing him, it's upgrading him. Dr. Brennan is recording every word through the observation intercom. Michael describes the sensation as integration. Two incompatible biological systems finding common ground, merging into something hybrid. He says the pain has stopped, says he doesn't feel cold anymore, doesn't feel fear, doesn't experience the limitations of human physiology. The organism has given him access to perceptions he never knew existed. He can see electromagnetic fields now, visualize radio waves and cellular signals as colored patterns in the air. He can hear sounds beyond normal human frequency range, detect vibrations through surfaces that would normally be imperceptible. His sense of time has changed, moments stretching and compressing in ways that make linear progression feel arbitrary. This is either profound, neurological damage causing hallucinations, or Michael is actually experiencing enhanced sensory perception as a result of the organism's integration with his nervous system. Either way, he's no longer entirely human. He's become something else, something new. 12:34 a.m. Jennifer Alvarez, the dental hygienist with lower organism concentration, is now conscious and aware in her isolation ward. She's been listening to Michael's descriptions through the intercom system that connects the isolation units, and she's saying she feels it too. The beginning of the changes, the subtle shifts in perception that suggest the organism is starting to affect her neural pathways. She describes it as awakening, like she's been living her entire life with sensory limitations she didn't know existed. And now those limitations are being removed. Colors are brighter, more complex than she ever perceived. Sounds have texture and depth beyond simple auditory processing. She can feel the electromagnetic hum of the hospital's electrical systems, resonating through the walls. Sarah is documenting these reports, but there's skepticism in her analysis. These could be symptoms of neurological damage, the brain misfiring as the organism disrupts normal neural function. Patients with brain injuries often report enhanced or altered perception. That's actually just their damaged neurons creating false sensory data. But what if it's real? What if the organism genuinely enhances human sensory capability as part of the integration process? That would suggest this isn't a simple infection, it's a symbiotic relationship. The organism gets access to a host body with mobility and environmental manipulation capabilities. The human gets enhanced sensory perception and possibly other biological upgrades we haven't discovered yet. If that's true, If the organism provides tangible benefits to the host, then calling it an infection might be inaccurate. It might be an enhancement, an evolutionary leap forced on humanity by an external biological agent. 12:51 a.m. The two remaining Sunday night injection patients have arrived at the testing facility. Both are showing advanced symptoms, organism concentrations above 40%. They're being moved directly into isolation wards adjacent to Michael and Jennifer, creating a cluster of infected individuals at various progression stages. Dr. Webb is proposing something controversial. He wants to introduce controlled exposure between the infected patients, allow them to interact through the isolation barriers, communicate verbally, share their experiences of transformation. The rationale is that if this organism creates some kind of collective consciousness or shared perception among infected individuals, they might be able to communicate in ways we can't observe directly. The Medical Ethics Board would never approve this under normal circumstances. But these aren't normal circumstances. We're dealing with an unknown organism that's already killed people and transformed others into something beyond human classification. Traditional medical ethics don't apply when you're studying something that might represent a new form of life. Dr. Brennan agrees to the proposal. The isolation ward intercoms are being connected, creating an audio network between the 5 infected patients. And as soon as the connections are established, something remarkable happens. They start speaking in unison, not coordinated speech, but overlapping words that create harmonic patterns. Voices blending into a single complex sound that conveys more information than individual speech could achieve. Sarah is recording the audio, analyzing the waveforms. The speech patterns show mathematical precision, specific frequency relationships that suggest intentional structure. The infected patients aren't just talking to each other, they're communicating through the organism itself, using their vocal cords as instruments in a larger biological network. 1:08 a.m. Michael Torres has reached what Dr. Brennan estimates is critical organism concentration. His blood is now more organism than human cells. His tissue completely infiltrated by crystalline structures. By all medical definitions, he should be dead. His cardiovascular system shouldn't be able to function with this level of biological alteration, but he's not dead. He's alert, responsive, and according to the monitoring equipment, his vital signs are stabilizing. Not stabilizing at human normal levels, but at new baselines that reflect his transformed physiology. Heart rate steady at 62 beats per minute. Blood pressure normalized at 105/68 core temperature. Locked at 91 degrees Fahrenheit. He's alive, transformed, but alive. And he's looking at the observation window, looking directly at Dr. Brennan with those pale gray eyes that reflect light in crystalline patterns. And he's smiling, not a threatening expression. A knowing smile, like he understands something she doesn't. Like he's waiting for her to figure out what he's already learned. Dr. Brennan asks him what he knows. What does the transformation reveal? What understanding comes from integration with the organism? Michael's response is unsettling in its clarity. He says the organism isn't from Earth, not in the sense of being extraterrestrial, but in the sense of being pre-Earth. Before terrestrial life evolved, before the current biosphere developed, there was something else, an earlier form of biological organization that existed in different environmental conditions. And when Earth's environment changed, when oxygen levels rose and temperatures shifted, this earlier life form retreated into isolated refuges where ancient conditions persisted. Deep ocean vents, subterranean reservoirs, frozen Antarctic lakes, places where the old environment survived, where ancient organisms could persist in stasis, waiting for conditions that might allow their return. And now, through human activity, through deep drilling in pharmaceutical manufacturing and blood banking systems, we've accidentally brought them back to the surface, given them access to the modern biosphere, introduced them to human hosts that they can integrate with and transform. We're not experiencing an infection, we're witnessing a resurrection, ancient life reclaiming the planet it once inhabited, using modern humanity as a vector for its return. 1:26 a.m. I'm struggling to process what Michael is claiming. Is this reliable information, or is it delusional thinking generated by an organism-damaged brain? How could he possibly know the origin and history of something that only entered his body 3 days ago? Unless the organism carries genetic memory, unless its crystalline structure encodes information about its evolutionary history, and that information becomes accessible to integrated human consciousness, Michael might be experiencing direct data transfer from the organism to his neural pathways, receiving knowledge downloaded from a biological archive that's billions of years old. Sarah is researching ancient extremophile organisms, trying to find scientific support for Michael's claims. There are theories about pre-oxygen lifeforms, organisms that existed before Earth's atmosphere changed composition. Some scientists have speculated about refugia where these ancient organisms might have survived. But no one's ever found definitive evidence. Until now. Until an organism that transforms human tissue started spreading through our blood supply, and the infected patients started describing a history that predates human civilization by eons. If Michael is right, if this organism really is ancient terrestrial life trying to reclaim its ecological niche, then contaminating the blood supply might not have been accidental. It might have been the organism's strategy from the beginning. Find a way into human bodies, transform us into hybrid forms that can survive in the environments it creates. Use us as tools for reshaping the modern biosphere back into conditions that favor ancient life. We're not victims of contamination. We're instruments of terraformation. 1:33 a.m. Dr. Webb has traced the pharmaceutical supply chain back to its origin point. The tetanus vaccine that infected Jennifer and the other Sunday night patients came from a batch manufactured 3 weeks ago at Preston Pharmaceuticals, a major vaccine production facility located 60 miles outside the city. Preston manufactures vaccines for regional distribution, producing millions of doses annually under strict FDA oversight. Their facility operates with multiple safety redundancies, contamination detection systems, quality control protocols that should make accidental organism introduction virtually impossible. But the impossible has already happened multiple times tonight. We're past the point of dismissing things as impossible. Sarah is coordinating with federal health authorities to dispatch investigation teams to Preston Pharmaceuticals, but it's 1:30 in the morning. The facility operates day shift only. The building is locked, security minimal, no one on site who can grant access or provide information. Breaking in would require federal warrants, legal authorization that takes time to process, time we might not have if contaminated vaccines are still in production, still being distributed, still being injected into unsuspecting patients across multiple states. 1:47 a.m. we have a breakthrough, but it's not the kind we wanted. One of Preston Pharmaceuticals' quality control technicians, Amanda Price, saw our broadcast coverage. She's been following the outbreak reports, and something about the description of the crystalline organism triggered a memory. She's calling Sarah right now, explaining what she witnessed 3 weeks ago. During a routine quality inspection, Amanda was checking vaccine batches in the refrigerated storage area when she noticed unusual sediment in one of the vials. Not normal vaccine precipitation, but crystalline structures suspended in the liquid. Geometric patterns that shouldn't exist in biological materials. She flagged it as potential contamination, initiated protocol for quarantine and disposal. But her supervisor, Dr. Richard Kellerman, overrode the quarantine order. He examined the vial personally, ran additional tests, and concluded that the crystalline structures were harmless mineral deposits from the water purification system. He authorized the batch for distribution, despite Amanda's objections. Amanda filed a formal safety report expressing her concerns. The report was dismissed. Dr. Kellerman has 25 years of experience in pharmaceutical manufacturing. His judgment supersedes a junior technician's caution. The batch was released for distribution, shipped to hospitals and clinics across the region, including St. Catherine's emergency room. Sarah is recording Amanda's statement, documenting every detail for federal investigators. But the critical question is, why would Dr. Kellerman override safety protocols? Why would an experienced pharmaceutical supervisor release a batch that showed obvious contamination markers? Either he made a catastrophic error in judgment, or he knew exactly what those crystalline structures were and released them deliberately. 2:03 a.m. Federal agents are en route to Dr. Kellerman's residence. They need to question him about his decision-making process, review his recent activities, determine whether this was negligence or intentional contamination. But when agents arrive at his house, they find it empty. Kellerman's car is gone. His personal belongings appear to have been hurriedly packed. He's fled. You don't flee from a quality control dispute. You don't abandon your home in the middle of the night unless you're anticipating serious criminal charges. Kellerman knew what he was doing, knew the organisms were dangerous, released them into the vaccine supply anyway and disappeared, before the consequences could catch up with him. This was by deliberate introduction of a biological agent into the medical supply chain with intent to cause harm. But who was Kellerman working for? Who benefits from spreading an ancient organism through the modern population? What agenda is served by transforming humans into hybrocrystalline beings? Sarah is accessing Kellerman's employment records, financial statements, communication logs, looking for connections to extremist groups, foreign interests, anyone who might have motivated or funded this attack. But his records are remarkably clean. No unusual financial transactions, no concerning contacts, no red flags that would have triggered security screening. Either he's incredibly good at hiding his connections, or he was working alone, driven by motivations we don't understand yet. 2:18 a.m. Jennifer Alvarez is experiencing rapid progression. Her organism concentration has jumped to 68% in the last hour. The crystalline structures are visible beneath her skin, creating luminescent patterns that pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. She's fully conscious, articulate, and describing the transformation as revelatory. She says she can feel the organism's presence as a separate consciousness sharing her neural pathways, not controlling her thoughts, but offering alternative perspectives. Expanded understanding of biological processes and environmental interactions. It's like having a second mind running in parallel with her own, processing information she couldn't access independently. Dr. Brennan is asking her specific questions, testing her cognitive function, trying to determine how much of Jennifer's original personality remains intact. The responses are coherent, detailed, demonstrating retention of personal memories and emotional connections. But there's something different in her speech patterns, a precision and clarity that suggests cognitive enhancement beyond normal human capability. Jennifer is solving complex mathematical problems without calculation. She's speaking in multiple languages she never studied. She's describing scientific concepts she has no formal education in. The organism isn't just transforming her body, it's upgrading her mental processing capacity, giving her access to information stored in its genetic memory. If this is what happens at late-stage transformation, if integrated individuals gain superhuman cognitive abilities, then calling this an outbreak might be misleading. It might be an upgrade, a forced evolutionary leap that enhances human capability at the cost of biological autonomy. 2:34 a.m. 4 more infected individuals have been identified through emergency room records. All received injections from the contaminated vaccine batch. All are showing symptoms. All are being transported to the isolation facility for monitoring. The infection count is now at 14 confirmed cases, with potentially hundreds more unidentified individuals who received contaminated injections and haven't presented for testing yet. Each infected person is a transformation in progress, a human being gradually becoming something hybrid, something that exists between human and ancient organism, and we still don't know if they'll survive the process. Michael and Jennifer are stable now, but they've only been at critical concentration for a short time. What happens after hours or days of organism integration? Does the transformation plateau at a stable hybrid state, or does it continue until nothing human remains? Dr. Webb is proposing long-term monitoring protocols. If the infected individuals survive transformation, they'll need to be studied extensively, their physiology documented, their capabilities assessed. This could be the most significant biological event in human history. The emergence of a new hybrid species that combines human consciousness with ancient organism capabilities. But that's optimistic thinking. The reality might be far darker. These people might be dying slowly, their humanity eroding as the organism consumes their tissue, leaving behind animated shells that look human but contain nothing of the original person's consciousness. 2:51 a.m. Federal investigators have located Dr. Kellerman. His car was spotted at a remote airfield 70 miles north of the city. He was attempting to board a private aircraft, destination unknown. FBI agents detained him before the plane could take off. He's being transported back to the city for questioning. Federal prosecutors are preparing charges: bioterrorism, mass endangerment, reckless homicide. If convicted, he's looking at life imprisonment or possibly death penalty depending on final casualty counts. But Kellerman is talking. He's already requesting immunity in exchange for information, claiming he was following orders from someone higher in the organization. Says there's a network of individuals coordinating these organisms, releases across multiple locations simultaneously. This isn't an isolated incident. This is a coordinated operation. Multiple pharmaceutical facilities, multiple blood banks, multiple points of introduction into the medical supply chain. The outbreak in our city is just one node in a larger biological attack happening nationwide. Sarah is contacting other Outbreak FM affiliates in different cities, checking if they're reporting similar incidents, and the responses are confirming Kellerman's claims. Chicago is seeing unexplained blood transfusion deaths. Los Angeles has contaminated vaccine reports. Dallas, Phoenix, Seattle, all experiencing simultaneous outbreaks with identical characteristics. Crystalline organism, rapid transformation, enhanced perception, integration rather than death. The pattern is consistent across all locations. This is a synchronized biological event, executed by people who understood exactly what they were releasing and planned the distribution for maximum impact. 3:14 a.m. I need to process what we're learning. Some organization with resources and coordination capabilities, deliberately introduced an ancient organism into medical supply chains across multiple American cities simultaneously. They contaminated blood banks and pharmaceutical facilities, knowing the organism would be transfused and injected into thousands of patients. Why? What's the end game? If the organism transforms humans rather than killing them, if it creates enhanced hybrid individuals with superior cognitive and sensory capabilities, then maybe the goal is forced evolution, accelerating human development through artificial selection, eliminating those who can't survive transformation, upgrading those who integrate successfully. It's eugenics with a biological agent, species modification on a massive scale, and if it's happening in multiple cities simultaneously, if hundreds or thousands of people are being transformed right now, then we're witnessing the beginning of a new phase in human evolution. One we didn't choose. One that's being imposed on us by people who decided that humanity needed to be improved. Consequences be damned. 3:21 a.m. Michael Torres has reached full integration. His organism concentration is now 94%, meaning only 6% of his blood volume consists of original human cells. By every medical measure, he should be dead. His cardiovascular system shouldn't function with this level of biological replacement. But not only is he alive, he's thriving. His vital signs are stronger than they've been since transformation began. Heart rhythm perfect, blood pressure optimal, respiratory function efficient beyond normal human capability. The organism hasn't killed him. It's rebuilt him into something more resilient than baseline human physiology. And he's asking to be released from isolation, saying he's not contagious, not a threat, perfectly capable of functioning in normal society. Dr. Brennan is refusing, citing safety protocols and unknown long-term effects. But Michael is making a compelling argument. He's been transformed, not infected. He's a new form of human, enhanced rather than diseased. Quarantine assumes pathology that doesn't apply to his condition. Sarah is watching the interaction through the observation feed, and she's conflicted. On one hand, Michael is right. He's not exhibiting symptoms of illness. He's exhibiting characteristics of advancement. On the other hand, we have no idea if late-stage transformed individuals pose risks we haven't identified yet. Releasing him prematurely could endanger others. The decision is above my authority level. This requires federal biocontainment protocols, CDC authorization, possibly presidential oversight. Michael Torres is no longer just a patient. He's a biological specimen representing a potential new branch of human evolution. 3:38 a.m. Jennifer Alvarez has reached 87% organism concentration. She's experiencing the same enhancement Michael described. Increased sensory perception, enhanced cognitive processing, access to information she shouldn't possess. And like Michael, she's requesting release from isolation, arguing that she's been improved rather than damaged. The other infected patients are progressing toward the same endpoint, all showing integration rather than rejection, all experiencing enhancement rather than deterioration, all moving toward a transformed state that appears stable and potentially permanent. If this pattern holds, if everyone who's infected survives transformation and emerges enhanced, then we're not dealing with an outbreak in the traditional sense. We're dealing with a mass upgrade event, involuntary, unethical, illegal, but potentially beneficial to those who survive it. The question is, what happens to society when you have two classes of humans? Original baseline individuals and enhanced transformed individuals. The enhanced will have cognitive advantages, sensory capabilities, possibly physical resilience that baseline humans can't match. How do you maintain social equality when one group is literally biologically superior? This is the kind of scenario ethicists have debated for decades in the context of genetic engineering and human augmentation. But those were theoretical discussions about future possibilities. Now it's happening in real time, forced on us by people who didn't wait for ethical consensus. 3:52 a.m. Dr. Kellerman is in FBI custody, and his testimony is providing disturbing details about the operation behind these organism releases. He's describing an organization called the Synthesis Project, a clandestine network of scientists, researchers, and biotechnology specialists who believe that human evolution has stagnated and requires artificial acceleration. The Synthesis Project acquired samples of ancient organisms from deep-sea exploration programs, analyzed their properties, and determined that they could be used to enhance human biology. They developed cultivation methods, created organism concentrates, and infiltrated pharmaceutical and blood banking systems to introduce the organisms into civilian populations. Their goal: create a transformed human population superior to baseline humanity. Force evolution through controlled exposure. The short-term casualties, the people who died during early transformation attempts, were acceptable losses in service of long-term species improvement. Kellerman was just one operative in a network spanning dozens of facilities across the country. Preston Pharmaceuticals was one contamination point among many. The Synthesis Project has been working on this for years, gradually infiltrating medical infrastructure, waiting for the right moment to execute simultaneous releases. That moment was this week. Coordinated introduction of organisms into blood supplies and vaccine batches across 15 major cities. Estimated exposure: 10,000 individuals in the first 72 hours. Expected survival rate after transformation: approximately 60%. That's 6,000 enhanced humans created in one coordinated event. The FBI is working to dismantle the Synthesis Project network, arrest the operatives, shut down the facilities, but the damage is done. The organisms are already in circulation. The transformations are already underway. You can't undo forced evolution after it's been initiated. 4:09 a.m. Social media is exploding with reports from other cities experiencing the same outbreak pattern. Transformed individuals posting about their enhanced perception, their new capabilities, their integration with the organism. Some are frightened, demanding help. Others are embracing the transformation, celebrating their enhancement. A hashtag is trending. Hashtag synthesized. Transformed individuals are using it to identify themselves, to find others like them, to build community around their shared experience of enhancement. They're organizing online, creating support networks, discussing their transformations openly. This is moving beyond medical crisis into social movement. The transformed aren't hiding. They're not ashamed. They're claiming identity based on their enhancement, distinguishing themselves from baseline humanity, beginning to see themselves as a separate category of being. If this continues, if the transformed population grows large enough and cohesive enough to function as a distinct group, we could be facing social fragmentation along biological lines. Enhanced versus baseline, synthesized versus natural, a fundamental divide in human society based on whether you've been integrated with an ancient organism. 4:26 a.m. Michael Torres is no longer requesting release. He's demanding it. His legal counsel has been contacted, and they're preparing writs of habeas corpus, arguing that Michael is being detained without just cause, that transformation doesn't constitute grounds for indefinite quarantine. The legal arguments are sound. Michael hasn't committed a crime. He's not exhibiting dangerous behavior. He's medically stable, cognitively competent, fully capable of making his own decisions. Holding him in isolation against his will violates civil liberties, regardless of his transformed status. But releasing him sets precedent. If Michael is allowed to leave quarantine, all the other transformed individuals can argue for the same treatment. And once transformed, people are integrated back into general society, interacting with baseline humans. The social and biological implications become unpredictable. Dr. Brennan is conferring with federal authorities, trying to determine legal grounds for continued detention. But the reality is that you can't quarantine someone indefinitely just because they're biologically different. That's discrimination. That's medical apartheid. Even with the best intentions, even with genuine safety concerns, you can't build two-tier society based on biological modification. 4:43 a.m. Jennifer Alvarez has joined Michael in demanding release. Her legal representation is filing similar motions, and now the other transformed patients are doing the same. All 8 individuals currently in isolation are requesting freedom, arguing that their transformations are complete, stable, and pose no risk to public health. The federal government is scrambling to establish legal framework for this situation. Emergency powers are being invoked, biocontainment authorities cited, national security interests claimed, but every legal justification they propose runs into constitutional problems. You can't suspend civil rights just because someone has unusual biology, unless you declare martial law, unless you invoke emergency powers so broad that normal legal protections are suspended. The White House is considering exactly that option, preparing executive orders that would allow military detention of transformed individuals pending further study. Sarah is reading the proposed orders, and she's horrified. This is how internment happens. How governments create legal justifications for imprisoning people based on characteristics they can't control. The transformed didn't choose to be infected. They're victims of biological attack, and now they're being punished for surviving it. 4:56 a.m. Michael Torres has made a decision that changes everything. He's not waiting for legal authorization. He's not accepting continued detention. He's simply leaving. The isolation ward isn't a prison cell. It's a medical room with standard door locks, designed to keep contagions in, not to restrain conscious, unwilling occupants. Michael walks to the door, touches the lock mechanism, and somehow, impossibly, the electronic lock disengages. Did he hack it? Does his organism integration give him the ability to interface with electronic systems? Or did the lock just fail coincidentally at the exact moment he needed it to? Security is responding, moving to intercept. But Michael is already out of the isolation wing, moving through the facility corridors with purpose and speed that suggests enhanced physical capability. Guards are pursuing, but they're not authorized to use force against what is technically a medical patient, not a criminal. Michael reaches the facility exit. The security doors are locked, requiring keycard access he doesn't have. He touches the reader panel. The doors unlock. He walks through, into the night. Free. Jennifer and the others are following his example. Isolation wards emptying as transformed patients simply leave. Electronic locks failing to contain them. Security unable to prevent their departure without resorting to violence that would violate medical ethics and civil rights. Within 10 minutes, all 8 transformed individuals have left the facility. They're dispersing into the city, enhanced humans returning to society whether society is ready for them or not. 5:04 a.m. The transformed are free, and we have no way to track them. They're not criminals. We can't issue arrest warrants. They're not missing persons. They left voluntarily. They're simply citizens with unusual biology, exercising their right to freedom of movement. But society isn't prepared for what they represent. People don't know how to interact with enhanced humans, don't understand what the transformation means or what capabilities the transformed possess. Fear of the unknown will drive reactions, and fear often leads to violence. Sarah is monitoring social media, tracking posts from the transformed individuals. They're not hiding. Michael Torres posted 15 minutes ago from a downtown coffee shop, describing his experience, answering questions from curious followers, explaining that transformation enhanced rather than damaged him. Other transformed individuals are doing the same, going to public places, interacting normally with baseline humans, demonstrating that they're not threats. It's a deliberate PR campaign, an attempt to normalize their existence, before fear can congeal into organized opposition. But the comments on their posts reveal growing anxiety. People demanding that the transformed be quarantined, tested, verified as non-contagious before being allowed in public spaces. Others are defending them, arguing for civil rights and bodily autonomy. The debate is escalating rapidly, becoming polarized and tribal. 5:19 a.m. The first confrontation has occurred. Michael Torres was approached in the coffee shop by a group demanding he leave, claiming his presence endangered other patrons. Michael tried to explain that he's not contagious, not dangerous. The group didn't care. They wanted him gone based purely on what he is, not what he's done. Security was called. Police arrived, and now there's a standoff. The police can't force Michael to leave a public business if he hasn't violated any laws, but the other patrons are threatening to call health authorities, claim biological hazard, create legal justifications for removal. Michael is live streaming the entire encounter. Thousands of people are watching in real time as police try to de-escalate a situation that has no clear resolution. How do you mediate between baseline humans who feel threatened and transformed humans who have legal rights to public access? The coffee shop owner makes an executive decision, closes the shop temporarily, asks everyone to leave, including Michael. Problem solved through private business authority rather than government intervention. But it's not a solution, it's avoidance. The confrontation will happen again elsewhere, and eventually, someone will make it violent. 5:36 a.m., Jennifer Alvarez has taken a different approach. Instead of going public, she's gone to her family. Her parents live in the suburbs, hadn't heard about the outbreak, didn't know their daughter had been transformed. She's at their door now, explaining what happened, asking them to accept her despite her enhancement. Sarah is monitoring Jennifer's phone, tracking the conversation with her mother's consent. Jennifer's parents are struggling to process what they're seeing. Their daughter looks different, talks different, exhibits capabilities that seem superhuman, but she's still Jennifer, still their child, still the person they love beneath the biological modifications. Her mother is crying. Her father is demanding answers. Who did this? How do they reverse it? Can Jennifer ever be normal again? Jennifer is explaining that reversal isn't possible, that she doesn't want to be reversed. That transformation has given her abilities and understanding she never imagined. Her parents don't know how to respond. Do they embrace this new version of their daughter? Do they mourn the loss of who she was before transformation? Can they love someone who's been fundamentally altered at a biological level? These are conversations happening in families across the city right now. Parents learning their children are transformed. Spouses discovering their partners are enhanced. Friends realizing their relationships have been changed by biological modification they never consented to witnessing. 5:52 a.m. Dr. Kellerman's testimony has revealed additional details about the synthesis project's long-term plans. The organism releases weren't meant to be one-time events. They're the beginning of ongoing transformation campaigns designed to gradually convert the entire human population over several generations. The synthesis project believes that baseline humanity is evolutionarily insufficient to handle coming environmental and technological challenges. Climate change, resource depletion, artificial intelligence advancement. All of these require enhanced human capability to navigate successfully. Transformation through organism integration is their solution. They don't see this as they see it as necessary intervention to save the species. Forced evolution to prevent extinction. The casualties are regrettable but acceptable given the magnitude of what they're trying to prevent. It's zealotry disguised as science. Utopian ideology implemented through biological violence. And now that thousands of people have been transformed and the process is visible to the public, they're hoping for social acceptance. Hoping that people will see the benefits of enhancement and voluntarily seek transformation. They might be right. Sarah is already seeing posts from baseline humans expressing interest in transformation. People asking how they can be infected, where they can find organisms, whether there's a waiting list for enhancement. The transformed individuals have become inadvertent ambassadors for a biological upgrade that some people genuinely want. 6:07 a.m. The sun is rising over a city that has been fundamentally altered in the span of one night. Hospitals are treating infected patients. Law enforcement is trying to locate and monitor transformed individuals. Federal authorities are dismantling the Synthesis Project network. And baseline humans are waking up to news that a new form of humanity exists among them. I've been on air for 9 hours straight, documenting this crisis, reporting developments, trying to help people understand what's happening to our society. But I'm exhausted, mentally, emotionally, physically depleted. Sarah is preparing to take over the broadcast. She'll continue coverage while I rest, maintaining our commitment to accurate real-time reporting. But before I sign off, I need to say something to everyone listening. What happened tonight wasn't natural, wasn't consensual. People were infected against their will, transformed without permission, forced to become something they didn't choose. That's violation at the most fundamental level. But the people who survived transformation, who integrated with the organisms successfully, they're still people, still conscious beings deserving of rights and dignity. They didn't ask for this, and they shouldn't be punished for surviving it. We're entering new territory as a society. We don't have frameworks for handling biological enhancement on this scale, don't have legal precedents or ethical guidelines. We'll have to figure it out together, baseline and transformed, working toward coexistence in a world that's been changed forever. 6:24 a.m. Michael Torres just posted another message on social media. He's calling for peaceful integration, asking transformed individuals to demonstrate their humanity through actions rather than demanding acceptance through confrontation. He's proposing voluntary registration, medical monitoring, transparency about capabilities and limitations. It's an olive branch to baseline society, an attempt to build trust across the biological divide. Whether it will be accepted or rejected depends on choices people make in the coming days. Jennifer Alvarez is still with her family. Her parents have made their decision. They're accepting her transformation, committing to supporting her through whatever comes next. It's a small victory in a night full of losses, but it matters. Family bonds transcending biological modification, proving that love can adapt even when bodies can't. 6:38 a.m. I'm signing off. Sarah will continue coverage. Federal authorities will issue official statements. Medical professionals will study the transformed individuals. Society will debate what this means for humanity's future. But right now, in this moment, all I can tell you is that we're living through a transformation event that will define generations. How we handle it, how we treat the people who've been changed, how we navigate the ethical and social challenges of biological enhancement. All of that will determine what kind of species we become. The organisms are here. The transformations are happening. Enhanced humans are walking among us. There's no going back to yesterday's normal. We can only move forward into whatever future we create together. This is David Morgan on Outbreak FM 98.3, reporting from a city where blood no longer means what it used to, where humanity is being redefined with every heartbeat, where the line between human and other has become blurred beyond recognition. Stay informed, stay compassionate, and remember that whether baseline or transformed, we're all trying to survive in a world that's changing faster than we can comprehend.
This is Sarah Chen taking over broadcast coverage. David is resting after 9 hours on air. I'll continue monitoring developments and providing updates as the situation evolves. If you or someone you know has received a blood transfusion or injection in the past week, please seek medical evaluation immediately. Early detection can help medical teams monitor your condition and provide support through transformation if it occurs. To the transformed individuals listening, you're not alone. Support resources are being established. Medical monitoring is available. And despite the fear and uncertainty, there are people working to ensure your rights are protected and your dignity maintained. Baseline humans listening. The transformed are not threats. They're victims who survived. They deserve compassion, not persecution. Please approach the situation with empathy and open minds. We're all navigating unknown territory together. Let's do it with humanity intact, regardless of what our biology becomes.